This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. So the Browns defense performance, I mean, like we were talking about this the week before, G. So I felt right to bring you on for a Friday night chat. One to kind of recap what we saw, what was real, what might not be real from that defensive line performance. And then also to talk about what we should expect going forward from this defense and why things feel a little bit different. Let's get started with just a little bit of a talk about last week. We're going to talk about Myles Garrett and the things that Jim Schwartz did to get him, one-on-one isolated. Look, Jim Schwartz did something good because what he did with Myles, putting him in the middle, which they've done before. Like Joe Woods did that last year, right?
He did kind of put him at 3 times. He did it.
Remember, he would, because Myles used to get the offsides call on that because he never timed the snap properly. Now he's figured out how he wants to time the snap, or they figured out what they want to do to attack it. But it's funny because Jim Schwartz is going to get the credit there because he did some extra stuff, right? He put the polish on that play where he had Anthony Walker kind of doing a chase and follow, where it's like, hey, he's going to create pressure, which means that pressure is going to come out through that same hole that he just created. So let me just slide there. You know what I mean? Don't go upfield, hold my ground, and then just slide over that A gap. Once I see Myles disappear in it, and then clean up, that'll put a wall over that gap. So then that'll allow somebody to clean it up, if not me, if you're AWOC, right? But he did something right when every single offensive lineman with a microphone, right? Every offensive lineman in the NFL currently with a podcast, every offensive lineman that is retired that has a podcast that's on TV, they all made sure they were like, yo, look at what they just did there. How did you stop that?
They did this to it. They disrespected me. They disrespected all of us. By the way, man, stop coming on here telling the truth because it doesn't really fit the narrative why we want to talk about Joe Woods, because actually, see, this is what you be doing. I mean, come on, you should have let that lie. Let the sleeping dog
just let the lie live.
Just let it post up. I'm like, yeah, he did do that last year. It just didn't look the same.
He didn't call it enough. Like, look. Somebody made the juicy beat, right? Like before Diddy got to it. The M-Tune made Juicy Fruit, right? It didn't get hot until Big spit on it. He ain't do nothing different to it. Just, made it hot.
By the way, this is why I mess with you. That's one of the greatest beats of all time. Like that beat came out when our parents was moving around, and the beat is still fired today.
You know what Jim Schwartz did? Jim Schwartz was in his P. Diddy bag. Because you know what P. Diddy was doing in the 90s? He was just like, I'm going to take this beat, sample it. It's the same beat, but I'm going to put Mace on it, and somehow it's going to be hot.
I'm going to put 112 on this. And then he was like, yeah, I took that. And then he said, take that. Yeah. He started to
look, the finishing touches is everything. And Jim Schwartz didn't pick that one up. He saw that one and was like, oh, yeah, I'm going to sample this. And then you know what I'm going to do? I got Biggie on the hook. You know what I mean? I got Biggie on the hook. And then I'm going to have.
I got Myles Garrett in A-gap. And Anthony Walker go follow him behind another. It's going to be crazy. See, this is the thing about the Jim Schwartz, what he did right there is we used to this play is not new. We used to run this in college. The call was bullet crossfire opposite. Bullets cross wrap fire opposite. So basically, but they used to run it with 2 linebackers, and we've seen that with the A gap blitzes.
Yeah, out of like nickel, a lot of that, right? Where you will see A-Walk and you'll see JOK kind of lined up over the center is what you're referring to.
Exactly. But now he did it with Myles Garrett, and Myles Garrett, the crazy twist he put on it was the basketball play. It wasn't like that was the disrespectful part. it's the way he probably explained it to him. And when he said, okay, so what do we want to do here? He said, our goal about this play is to get the center or the guard to commit one way. What's the best way to do that than rocking back and forth and him not knowing where you're going? And it's basically like running a hesitation or a crossover. And then
That
he
was
goes
like,
one way, and then now they commit. And right when you come off that, you got another dude screaming backside right off his hip. And it's difficult to stop, man.
That was like watching when LeBron has the ball on the wing, like early Bron had the ball on the wing, and he would just do this little slow crab triple, and then you knew the second you just coughed the opposite way, he was going to blow by you, right? Like that blow by was something crazy is what he could do there. And we talk about defensive line play is kind of like you could talk about it in the same terms as basketball play, because a lot of it is just like, okay, we're going to play 2-man here, right? Like we're going to try to run these two off of each other. We're going to try to pair up these two. And you even see like where Pittsburgh will literally run a pick and roll. Like they literally have run them Cam Hayward, Alex Highsmith pick and rolls where you'll see Cam just go like this.
Yep, with his huge chest.
Yeah. And then Hayes, yeah, the Highsmith just slips underneath it, right? So, or they could have it where it's like somebody, kicks out. A lot of stuff to do there. But the difference is, in times last year, I felt like Joe Woods was trying to do a lot when he didn't have to. Jim Schwartz realizes, I don't have to be a genius. I have Myles Garrett. I have 3 great corners. I have safeties I feel comfortable about, and I have linebackers who can fly to the football.
That's it.
I don't have to think up. I don't have to think it up crazy. All I have to do is just call some plays for Myles Garrett. It's the difference, and this is the last basketball analogy I'll use. I talked about this before. It's the difference between David Blatt and Ty Lue. David Blatt was out here trying to get like Deion Waiters corner threes at the end of the game to win games when he had Kyrie and LeBron. Ty Lue took that clipboard, man. He's like, look, Bron on the wing, Kyle on the wing, stop it. Like, I don't gotta be a genius. I got Bron, right? And sometimes being smart is realizing when you don't have to be smart. Right? How many people have tried to be the smart person or show everybody that they're smart in situations where it's like, it would be way smarter to just realize what's in front of you. Right? Like that's what somebody who's smart would do. And that's what Jim Schwartz, he has the experience, and he's not trying to prove anything out there. He's already got his legacy down as a defensive coordinator. He's like, I have Myles Garrett. I don't need to reinvent the wheel. When you got this kind of talent, I'm just going to use this. You know what he said on Sunday? And I'm interested to see if they do this in the next 2 weeks versus Pittsburgh and Tennessee is, I dare you to beat us. That was basically what he said. Beat us. I dare you. I don't think you can.
You said you're not going to use any more basketball references. They ain't got nothing to do with me. So I was listening to Steve Kerr the other day, and it just makes perfect sense because basketball is a 5-man game. And so much of it is predicated on your main superstars. If I have 2 of the best 10 players on the court, there's really nothing you could do about it if I accentuate my offense and just let them play and let them shape the game by their skill set. Case in point, Steve Kerr talked about when he got to Golden State. He said he had to make himself conscious. He said the first time Steph pulled up from 45 feet, he was every single college coach that was in his feelings. He was every single college coach that said that's a bad shot. That's being, that's a hero ball. He said, but I had to realize that was his God-given skill set. That was what Steph Curry brought to the table. And he said the first time he shot it and it went in, I told myself that I was never going to stand between what we did best and what I thought was supposed to be the goal for the team. And so from that point on, you start to see dagger threes. You see the evolution of the game. It's the same way with football. For so long, it seems like Myles Garrett was a guy that could get you 14 to 16 sacks by just running one move, just running the hoops and ripping. And listen, there's been guys who make careers out of that. However, one of the things that we see with Jim Schwartz, and this is why I feel like he's going to have one of the best years of his career, and I think he will break the sack record, is the fact that he's saying, look, I don't have to coach LeBron. I don't 6'9", 260. He's let him run the offense. And Miles Garrett run the defense.
Miles Garrett.
Miles Garrett, and I did that on accident. Miles.
Miles Garrett. I might have to use that one. I might have to steal that. We gonna have co-ownership over that
we'll
one.
That,
like Miles Garrett.
Miles is crazy. Listen,
but it's one of those things where it's like, sometimes coaches do this. Sometimes analytics people do this. Sometimes just football guys do this, where they learn there's one way, or there's like this way that you know how to get success, right? And it can break people's brains at times when somebody is so good, it's not comprehensible, right? Think about Pat Mahomes. Part of the reason Pat Mahomes wasn't the number 2 pick in the draft was because Mitchell Trubisky was the pick that made people feel safe, right? Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes did things that like GMs weren't comfortable with. Oh, he can run. Oh, he can throw the ball him out. But does he get to his second progression consistently? Like, they were so worried about these things that make them comfortable that they didn't see outside the paradigm of their time. So they took Mitchell Trubisky. Like, we wonder how that happens. That's how that happens, because coaches will look at a guy like Pat Mahomes and go, you can't do that in the NFL. Maybe he can, right? But they'll get so caught up in that. And I think it's fortunate for Pat Mahomes, not that he landed with Andy Reid, but he landed in a situation where somebody realized, oh, this dude's Jordan. Let me just let him be. He gonna be all right, right? Some players need to be coached really hard, need to figure out what they're gonna be good at, what they're not. I think Grant Delpit's a great example of somebody who, hey, he needed somebody who's going to tell him 3 things. You do these 3 things. You stay close to the line of scrimmage. You cover a man and you tackle. That's what you do. And as long as you do those 3 things, you will be great, right? Because he came into the league doing everything, and he's not do everything. He is do 3 things, and he does those 3 things really well.
I got to ask you this question because this, it comes off the top of my head. Do you know you're an example of one of those people, right? Like what you do with media is different from what the tradition is, right? Like you've amassed a lot of people and you've amassed a very loyal fan base across all spectrums. It's not just you see your name here. If I go to UCSS, we'll see your name. If I'm in the barbershop, they'll say your name. They bring your name up everywhere. And I think even when it comes to media, you've captivated people because you're non-traditional and you didn't come through the regular ranks at the way that you got to get in the game. So what happens is people don't know how to deal with you. Like the mainstream people don't know how to deal. Like when you walked into training camp, they was just like, well, hold on. Like since when they start giving he on the internet, how he get up in here? Like,
they think I remember like they were like, "Oh, who's he interning for?" And I'm like, "Because
who you following?"
Yeah, and it's like, "No, I'm just here."
and so,
or it's like the thing that gets me all the time is whenever you want to do anything that's like traditional media, they always want to ask like, "Who are you of?" So it's like, "Oh, I'm this of the Akron Beacon Journal," or "I'm this of Cleveland.com," and it's like, "I'm independent. I'm Quincy. Like, I'm just me. Like, I'm here. Like, I'm not, YouTube did not pay me to come down here. YouTube just has a revenue like split with me." So it's like, it's one of those things where like, oh, that hasn't adjusted. But back to my main point, and I appreciate that, G. That's love right there.
I gotta give you your flowers because you're the first one to do that. Like, I don't think they understand how difficult it is to break in the industry when you independent, ain't nobody behind you, but the voice of the people is so loud behind you that they gotta respect your game.
That's what's up, man. I just work to try to make sure I maintain that. But it's one of those things too. When you look at it, sometimes people will coach themselves out of greatness because they think they have to like squeeze it out of guys. Greg Williams, great example, told Myles Garrett to do one thing. Why would you do that, right? You saw Myles Garrett told him to do one thing. Why would he do that? Because when it's not Myles Garrett, that might be a good idea. Like, he has great defenses in the XFL, and that probably works if you just tell these guys to get good at one thing. Myles Garrett was born being good at more than one thing when it comes to pass rushing. So it doesn't work that way. And you see this with great talent. The guys who recognize that talent early and allow that talent to be that talent are the ones who benefit the most from that. Bill Belichick, it didn't take long for him to go, nah, that's Tom, bro. Like, Tom, you do what you need to up there, right?
You go over there and just do your Tom thing. You just I don't want much. Just go over there.
It's also a balance of like some guys think that they're that guy. They're not. Baker Mayfield was an example of that where he thought, hey, I should have full control over this. And Kevin was like, no, you shouldn't. And then he gave him full control. And that's how 2021 happened, right? Like, that's very well documented that that's what went down with those two. And it's like, you got to find that balance. But a dude like Miles is obvious. And what I like about Jim Schwartz is that he decided very early on in this thing, I think I have one of the best defensive rosters in football, and I'm going to do my best not to get in these guys' way. Man, and what impressed me about that this week was the guys that we were talking about, Grant Delpit, Myles Garrett, Denzel, they were here last year on this defense that wasn't even average. It was awful. And the reason it was awful is because we had all these, he's trying to run. There's a great video on this on how modern defense in the NFL works on YouTube, and it talks about all the if this then that rules that corners have in these too high zone heavy looks that Joe Woods was trying to run. And it's like, hey, if you have the Bengals roster, that makes sense to run because you can find smart corners, but it's really hard to find super talented corners, especially on the NFL level. So, hey, if you have guys who could figure out those coverage rules, be comfortable in it, that's fine. That's what a lot of late Bill Belichick defenses were. But if you notice, and if you ask any defensive coordinator that's accomplished anything in the NFL, they will tell you, if I can run cover one, and just man up everybody, I would run that every play. Because that's, if you have the talent to do it, you don't want to get complicated. And I think they got too complicated for their own good, got in their own guys' way. Given what we've seen in camp, G, I am fairly convinced, more so than I usually would be, that this is just, I don't think they're going to hold Joe Burrow to like 82 yards again, right? Like that's not going to happen. But I think this is fairly going to be what we see of this Browns defense, an aggressive defensive front, aggressive corners. They're going to get beat over top a couple times this year. Like, it's going to happen. They're going to give up some games where they just don't have a great day from a coverage standpoint, but it's going to be what it's going to be. But I think this is real life for this defense. I think that they're going to be one of the best 7 defenses in the NFL. If things go more like week 1, that's the best defense in football. I totally agree. Like, the only defense I can see competing with that is San Francisco. And I think the Browns have better pieces at every level than San Francisco other than linebacker, right? They have Fred Warner. We got nothing on Fred Warner. Yeah, listen, we don't got one of those. Miles, Nick Bosa, I'll take it every day of the week. Whoever their second guy is, Darius Smith, I'll take it every day of the week. Corners, I'll take our corners every day of the week over San Francisco's.
And what you said right there is something I was there. I'm glad you said it, so I don't have to be the over top D-jerk reaction guy. You're emotional, G. Bush. The hyperbole you can. It's only one game. Don't get excited, because when you see it, like when you are able to analyze and able to watch it and look at the pieces and parts, you just like, you guys are forgetting that the guys on the Browns rosters are some of the best guys at their position in the entire league. Myles Garrett isn't just going to be terrible tomorrow. Denzel Ward isn't going to wake up and be trash tomorrow. One of the things that I think that, and the thing that struck me, was at the energy and the effort that they played with in week 1. And one of the reasons, as a former player, that you play with that sort of energy level is that's how you get buy-in. You say buy-in, what does that mean? How do you get buy-in? Well, when Jim Schwartz says, I trust you to do you, now you have skin in the game, right? Because if you're Denzel Ward and you were playing zone coverage, and you think my strong suit is man to man, and you Greg Newsome, and you feel like, I can handle anybody, I'm not a third corner, I can handle my stuff man to man. And if you Martin Emerson and you think I might be the best corner on the roster and I want to go to the Pro Bowl too, Think about that jolt of energy it gets where you go into that game planning meeting and Jim Schwartz says, we about to lock these boys down 75% of the game. We just going to let y'all go at it. We don't even think Tyler Boyd that good. Hey, listen, we feel we just as good in this place too. And y'all boys up front, hey, just go after it. Just you get Burrow. We'll worry about what we doing back here. When you get that energy level, what it makes you want to do is that's how you play fast because you ain't worrying about it. And you said it was brilliant. All of these, when you talk about the route trees and different things with zone coverage and the conversions, if number one goes this way, if number two runs a slanting up and then you want to carry him and then you convert it to man, you're like, bro, like that's a lot of stuff. And all it takes is one person not to know what you're doing and everybody look crazy. So
a lot of moving pieces. When it works, it looks like a clock. But the problem with a clock is a lot of moving pieces, right? And moving pieces break. Last thing I'll say is also when it comes to just like as a competitor, right? When they on the football field, when you feel like you getting beat and it's because you doing something that you don't feel like it's your strength, that affects you. And like when Jamar Chase is eating you up and you like, man, you know what it'd be if I got you, man, one-on-one, right? Now, here's the situation for Denzel. He's it, man. If he gets beat, he has no excuse to tell himself. So now he has to war up, basically. All right. And that's the difference too. In mentality, when you put defensive players to be in the best spot they can, is it going to be more risky? Yes, but I think that risk is fine if you believe in your talent, because if those guys are getting beat doing what they feel like puts them in the best spot, they're not going to be looking at you when they fail. They're not going to be looking at the linebacker when they fail. They're going to be like, okay, I got to war up. Like I got to turn up, basically. Like that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to have to turn up, because when you get beat doing stuff that you don't really 100% agree with, you start to get passive. Man, that ain't me. That ain't that. That ain't this. It's very easy. Anybody who's played sports and been in any type of situation like that knows that's exactly what happens to your mind. Like, you know what I mean? If I was doing that, I would be able to stop that. But when you are doing that and you can't stop that, either you war up or you shut up, right? Like that's what you got to do.
Anybody that's been married know what it is. You get married, let your wife suggest this restaurant, and you really wanted to go to the ones. You be like, man, we could have went to the spot. You got us going out. The cheddar biscuits and lobster, Red Lobster always get it done. You want to try something new out. And we had to wait in line for 15, 20 minutes. They didn't even sit us down. The Red Lobster dude know me. They know us, babe. They got us together. What are we doing here? And, but when you pick it, it's always a little bit better when it hit right, bro. But at the end of the day, people going to come around. It take 2 games for us to figure it out. I think people will see it because they still kind of scared about the Steelers and the boogeyman and the jerseys and the colors, but they're going to see quickly and quietly that the Browns is that thing.
Also, you got to think like Washington, when we played them, they said, yeah, that's a real defensive line. The Eagles, when we went against them, Jason Kelce was like, nah, that's real. That's one of the best defensive lines in football. And then week 3, who was it in week 3? Was it the Jets? No, the Jets were Hall of Fame. It was somebody in week 3. They said we had the Chiefs, and we had a similar performance against them. So it was like, oh, okay, everybody know. Okay. Like everybody know what's good with that. So that tells me all the signs there are like, nah, that's not a mirage. That's real. Like all the evidence beforehand, it was not an unpredictable thing that the defensive line dominated like that. It was kind of an expectation. They lived up to that expectation. So we should see more of it. It's going to be interesting to see what we see for the rest of the year. But G, let's head to your channel, and you want to talk a little bit about DW? Is that what we're doing?
Got to.
All right. Let's head on over then, bro.